Hello and welcome to the Kalish Institute. So if someone could please raise their hand so I know my sound is working, then I can relax and not worry about technical difficulties. Thank you, Susie. All right, so action time. So life in the time of COVID. So my take on what's happening now is that this is a generational disease. We are going through a generational change, which means you guys have a generation of work ahead of you, 20 years. It's a generation now. In terms of sorting this out, when we have my advanced student group every Tuesday morning, 25% of people's practice is long haul COVID right now. It's happening. It's the beginning of the chronic illness phase of this pandemic has just begun. And so when I think about the ICU doctors that are in our training program, and like superheroes, are you kidding? Like superheroes. They're like Spider-Man and Wonder Woman kind of human beings. They've been putting all this effort into surviving this pandemic for themselves personally and to take care of their patients at the same time. It's just incredible. Well, that kind of level of overwhelming work is heading your way too if you're involved in functional medicine, because one of the things that we do in functional medicine, as we're going to be talking about tonight, for decades, for generations, I'm maybe third generation functional medicine doc. What we've been doing for generations in functional medicine is treating chronic infections, right? That's kind of one of the central things that we've been doing. And GI infections, we're going to talk about tonight. And turns out that there is a GI form of COVID too, right? Where it gets into the intestinal tract and attaches to those receptors, same ACE2 receptors in the intestinal tract, and causes destruction of amino acid transportation. And some of the people with long COVID symptoms are having pretty chronic GI issues. So anyways, we've got a huge amount of work ahead of us, so we got to learn how to do all these things. And as always, the microbiome is sort of center stage in a functional medicine context. Okay, so we're going to work on this. And now, let's see. I'm going to introduce myself. This is me, Dan Kalish. I founded the Kalish Institute a while ago, 2006. I had been teaching for a long time. I started teaching like in 1995, you can believe that. And since 2006, I've trained over 5,000 doctors in how to do this work. We do a lot of telemedicine classes, functional medicine classes. Mostly we're focused on taking people who are interested in starting practice and giving them all the skills necessary, whether it's how to set up your EMR or how to interpret labs. My personal passion is lab interpretation. And I've been forced to learn how to run a business, so I'm happy to share that information with you all too. But if someone took all the business stuff away from me, I'd be pretty happy to just be interpreting labs all the time. And to that end, I've done a lot of work. I've worked in the early 1990s with a man named Dr. Bill Timmons, who taught me pretty much everything I know about adrenals and GI and female hormones, and a man named Dr. John Lee, who was a well-known doctor in the 70s and 80s around hormones. It was one of my mentors in female hormones. And then more recently, I've been working with Dr. Richard Lord, and we'll talk about his work in the second part of tonight's talk, okay? And Richard's an incredible human being. He's the first scientist in our field to think about, conceptualize, and set up and run a microbiome test. And that test was Richard's sort of baby for many, many years. He's long retired now, but that is called the GI effects test that Genova runs. That is 100% Richard Lord's work. I just spent 3 hours on the phone with the man today. He's still alive and kicking. He's 80 years old. He's charging around. He's living his best life. He's still researching. He's really into thymin right now, in case you're tracking Dr. Richard Lord's thought processes. He's I don't want to say the word obsessing, but he's deeply researching thymin, and therefore I'm learning a lot about thymin for the last couple of weeks. But he and I, in the first couple of years of our relationship, focused almost exclusively, well, after we did organic acids, for a couple of years we spent working on the microbiome. And that's a lot of what I want to talk about tonight. A lot of the sort of the work that I'm doing tonight is sort of derivative of what Dr. Lord and I were working on a few years ago and how he was training me. I'm also in practice too. I have patients all day, yesterday, not today, all day yesterday I did, and Tuesday as well. And I'm IFM certified, which is impressive because that's a really hard test. If you've ever taken that exam, I just barely passed it, to be honest. But I've been in practice for a really long time. Done work like with the Mayo Clinic, and I can show you the study here. The Mayo Clinic study is kind of interesting. If you guys want to take a look at it, we can send you a copy. But we did an evaluation of a functional medicine approach to treating fatigue and digestive issues in women with Sue Cutshall. She's from Mayo. Rochester. Larry Bergstrom is the head of integrated medicine at Mayo in Arizona. And the good news is, if you ever want to flip through and read this, this stuff really works. Okay, this was like after like 3 years of working with Mayo Clinic, we published this thing. I was like, okay, thank goodness the statistical analyses all came out. And I don't have a PhD in statistics. I don't understand almost any of this stuff. I'm the clinician that did all the work here. But anyways, at the end of the day, conclusions were that not everybody, many people got better. Statistically significant number of people got better. And maybe we should do some more research on it, kind of thing. But the reason why I bring this up is because what I want to talk about tonight is exactly the protocols that we followed in this class, in this research study, where we look at stress and the adrenal hormones and get that sorted out, lifestyle factors, yeah. And then we look at the gut microbiome and get that sorted out. And it's an integrated program with working with the adrenals, but adrenals is code word. That's a code word for stress, emotional stress, physical stress, dietary stress, inflammatory stress, right? So the lifestyle stuff, that's what adrenals are to me, getting that sorted out and then working on the gut. We're going to talk about the gut component tonight, and we'll have time to look at labs. And we did a survey of you guys and who actually listens to these things the other day, and some of you are just starting out. Some of you have been in practice for a long time and know a lot, and some of you haven't even started your practices yet. And it's about a third, a third, a third. A third haven't started practice yet. A third are just getting going, and a third is super experienced. So I saw that report this week and I thought, oh, that's hard. I'm actually going to do 2 totally separate talks tonight. And this makes no sense at all. My staff doesn't know I'm doing this, but there's no one to stop me because I'm in charge. So I'm just going to do this. So I'm going to tell you guys what you're getting in for. I'm going to do the basic talk that I'm supposed to be doing that everyone told me to do that has been promoted and marketed first. So those of you that are here for that will be happy because you will hear that. And then I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a break, probably get a glass of water. I'll be quiet for 5 or 10 or maybe 15 seconds. Then I'm going to come back and do a completely different talk for the higher level people that have been doing this work for a while. If you want to stick around for both, awesome, great. We're going to wrap it all up within the hour anyhow. And I will at the very end then look at questions and review some labs all throughout as much as we can and design some programs. Okay, so we're going to have the what should be, I don't know, you can call it or introductory level talk first, have a few second break, like a short intermission, and then I'm going to get into an unplanned talk where I'm going to show you the work that Richard Lord and I have been doing, kind of a little bit of behind the scenes talk. It's not a organized talk. I'm just going to show you the stuff that we're actually working on so you can see how that's been developing. But I think it'll be of interest to you, those of you that are more advanced. We have things coming up. In February, on the 16th, we have this Business Essentials Boot Camp. We do this once or twice a year. It's become one of our more popular classes, and it's a couple-month deep dive into what you should be doing in your business. We have people starting out their practices taking this class. We do have an emphasis on telehealth, telemedicine. That's something that you're interested in. We have information on that. We have very advanced doctors taking this class that just their business has gotten out of control and they just need to organize it and make it more profitable and more suitable for what they're trying to do. So if you're listening to this mini series, you get $100 off. Enter that code MiniBEB22. Good luck remembering that. If you can't remember the code, just email my office. We'll give it to you. Just say, hey, I was in the mini series. I want to sign up for the boot camp on business. And this is a really, really good class if you're wanting to make your practice really successful financially. That's really what we're after here, so that you can be less stressed emotionally. So that's coming up in February. And we don't do those very often, so if you think about doing it, you probably do it. And then we have our mentorship, which is the flagship one-year program, and that's starting at the end of January. And this is our group of just amazing human beings that take this class. I am honored and privileged every week to just step up and teach. I don't even know if it's teaching. It's more like facilitating, maybe is the word. But this is all about lab interpretation. This is like 1 full year of you figuring out how to be best in class at lab interpretation. And I can honestly say, when people graduate from this mentorship after 1 year, I would put them up against anyone else in the industry in terms of lab interpretation skills, because you can't get this training anywhere else. Doesn't exist. And the volume of tests that we review and the conceptual framework that Dr. Richard Lord has provided to us, who is the scientist, as I mentioned, he not only developed the GI effects, we were joking about this the other day. He's the first guy that ever ran an organic acids profile. He's the first one that went out and bought a machine to even think about that. And amino acids and fatty acids. It was all Richard Lord. And all of his information is seeped into this mentorship. This is the kind of Richard Lord experience now. I'll tell you a story. When I was at an IFM conference about 3 or 4 years ago, I was in a bar. It wasn't late. It wasn't like a seedy bar. It was a hotel bar. Okay, I'm in the bar at the hotel, and I was just sitting there having a drink and waiting for some people to show up. And this doctor comes up. It was a very famous doctor. He sits down, and we're just talking. It's like, hey, how's it going, Michael? And he said, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm working with Richard Lord. And I told this famous doctor I'm working, and he started crying. It was like 7 or 8 at night in the middle of the bar. He started crying. He said, Richard. So if you're a senior functional medicine practitioner or a doctor and you hear the words Richard Lord, you start crying. This is the man that really developed this field for us in so many different ways, and just a brilliant scientist. So anyways, if you want to really be an expert at labs interpretation, sign up for the mentorship when you're ready. I know it's a lot and it's a big commitment, but you get a $799 discount if you use that code, which I just covered up there. Jan 22, Jan 22 is the code. What's more realistic is just to email the office and say, hey, I'm interested in the mentorship, and one of our staff will get on the phone with you and give you a Zoom tour of what the class is like, and you can see how exciting and cool it really is. Okay, so we offer Zoom tours for the mentorship, and we have the boot camp coming up. All right, now we're gonna get to the topic at hand here, which is GI disorders. And so we're going to go through again, this is the basic introductory lecture, then we're going to stop, and then we're going to look at some more advanced conceptual stuff, because I think it'll be interesting for some of you. So this is a really common problem. 40% of people throughout the world have a GI problem. Yeah, this is the same in my practice. It's at least half of my practice. Could be anything from heartburn to reflux to constipation to diarrhea, food allergies, you name it. And the problem is that when you have a GI disorder, it's going to spiral out and cause problems all throughout the body. And so you could have a neurological condition that's directly related to your gut. You could definitely have an autoimmune condition that was triggered by a gut problem. You could have joint pain related to your gut. You could have fertility problems. We see that all the time. You could have a fertility problem that's coming from your gut. Hormones, brain, cardiovascular systems, all the systems of the body rely upon a healthy microbiome. And when I was learning this work in the early 1990s, that was sort of a speculative thought, wasn't it? You know, the naturopaths knew this because they've been doing this for hundreds of years. But now, every year, thousands and thousands of research studies on the microbiome does X, Y, Z. You know, it's become common knowledge in the scientific community that the microbiome is really important. How does it really work? Well, we're going to look at it purely from a clinical perspective right now. This is purely clinical. This is just practical, how you would treat it. And everything I'm about to say is only necessary for you to know in relation to interpreting a lab. So we're skipping 99.9% of the information that is out there on the microbiome, and we're just looking at it from a, I have a lab report in front of me perspective. I'm not sure what to do. How do I interpret this lab? Because we want you guys to start ordering labs so you can start helping patients. And if you don't know how to interpret a GI lab, it's very intimidating and you might not order them. And by the way, if you're ordering labs and you haven't heard about Rupa Health yet, you should check out Rupa Health. We were talking about them for like an hour today in one of my office meetings. Seems like we talk about Rupa almost every day. Because every day it's like, my staff is like, and guess what? Rupa does this too. I'm like, no way. And they're like, yeah. And Rupa does that too. I'm like, really? Okay. So anyways, Rupa is a distribution company that you can order labs through, and they take care of all the lab hassles. It's one of the most expensive parts of running my practice is dealing with the lab testing and the tracking of the labs and the getting of the blood draws and all that stuff. One of the most expensive parts of my practice for 29 years has been this. Rupa takes all that away and you don't pay them anything. In fact, the patients pay them and you don't even deal with the payment part. Okay, so Rupa Health, if you're not using them yet, you should use them because they will save you a fortune, all right? It's a really well-designed program or system, I should say. Okay, so now, you have a lab. Here's a scenario. You've got a lab back. I want to show you the tests so you can see what we're up against here. Here's a GI 360 from Doctor's Data. Classic, one of the best tests. You can see they have this dysbiosis index. They have this key findings page here, okay? They have page after page of these commensal bacteria, which we're going to talk a lot about. They get into, parasitology workup. They have pathogenic bacteria. They look at some of the viruses. They look at all the GI function. Okay, that's a GI 360. Here, I was just looking at, this is just from a couple days ago, yeah? It's our mentorship class. So in the mentorship class, people submit labs. So I'm just gonna show you a couple that just came in. So here's an adrenal lab. We're not talking about that tonight, but every patient workup should include that. And then here's a GI. So here's a GI effects from Genova, okay? And similar to the GI 360, they look at the microbiome, they look at the metabolic factors, they look for infections, etc. And then the third one that's quite popular in the industry, and you need to learn how to read all three of these. I'm just going to scroll down because I know there's one in here because I saw it earlier. This is from Tuesday morning's call, I think. That's a hormone panel, but I know it's here coming out. Just wait. There it is. GI map. Okay, diagnostic solutions to the GI map. Look, this patient has C. difficile, toxin A and B positive. That's a painful and not good thing to have. A little bit of H. pylori, ouch. It's got the commensal bacteria, dysbiotic bacteria. This person's pretty messed up. And then yeast overgrowth markers are checked, and then they have a section on the GI health. Okay, so you have GI 360, you have GI effects, you have GI map. You need to learn how to read all three. And what I want to talk about right now is a system that you can apply to all three of those tests so you can glance at them and in 5 or 10 minutes have a general sense of what you're going to say to the patient who's waiting in the other room. Okay, 3 stages of GI dysfunction. This is what you're looking for, whichever one of these labs that you have. It's just a very practical, simple, easy way to interpret things. This is actually not to be too self-effacing or self-deprecating or whatever. This is actually how I do it, really. In my own brain, I look, is there a pathogen present? Are there GI organ issues? Is there a problem with the commensal bacteria? This is my thinking process, 1, 2, 3, put it like that. So I just put it into 3 stages because this is how, when I grab these reports, this is what I'm thinking, I'm looking for. I'm looking for these 3 things. And what are they? Microbiome disruption, that's number 1. Number 2, GI organ issue problems, okay? And we'll come back in a minute. I'm just going through this fast kind of. And number 3, some kind of parasitic problem, bacterial problem, yeast problem, some kind of infection. All right, so let's go back and just kind of take a deep breath and look at these in a little more detail. So there's 3 different things that we're looking at, 3 stages. The first stage and the earliest stage for most people is a problem with the microbiome itself. And what do we mean by that? That's the commensal bacteria that all these labs measure now. And I'm not saying that I had a really difficult time earlier in my career, but I am saying that we never had these microbiome tests. Like, these didn't exist 30 years ago, you guys. Not even a little bit. No one had PCR technology then. They hadn't invented it yet. PCR is to stool testing what, like, I don't know, batteries are to cell phones or something, you know. It's like going from a landline to an iPhone 17 or whatever they're up to now. It's a really big deal to have this technology. We were looking under microscopes for a long time to try to find these things. Now they just run the DNA. I mean, that's a pretty big upgrade. Going from a human being looking under a microscope to looking for DNA, it's a big deal. So anyways, you should talk to the labs about this if you don't know a lot about PCR, because it's pretty impressive, the technology. So the first stage here is PCR driven testing for commensal bacteria, the good guys. And all kinds of things can mess them up. You can eat, if you have a patient with a really messed up microbiome and you get him eating the right food for 3 or 4 days and you redo the stool test, it'll look totally different. Doesn't take long. Every bite of food that we take impacts the microbiome. 3 or 4 days of a healthy diet can make a huge difference for people. You can also have problems with stress, lack of sleep, toxic relationships or toxins themselves. All these things are going to contribute. Antibiotics, overuse of antibiotics to disruption of the microbiome. Okay, and that's what I call a stage 1. If that goes on for long enough, then eventually the GI organs start to get involved, and we have what we call stage 2. Now you've got GI organ dysfunction and immune weakness. Weakness of the immune system. The mucosal immune system is weak. That's the next stage. And then the third stage is that people have infections. The immune system is so weak, it can't surveil everything anymore, and all these infections start to break out. Now the person's often running in a really bad way. So when you look at each of these labs, you're simply looking for an infection, an organ dysfunction, and the microbiome itself, and ignore everything else. Ignore everything else. Once you've looked at that and you decide what's going on, then you can fill in the details. Then you can fill in the details a little bit later if you want. Like as an example, not that I'm obsessed with cars, but I did buy a new car pretty recently. I bought an Audi Q3, the whole optic blackout edition thing. It's kind of like the nicest one that they make. And so I'm thinking, I don't know, what do I think about the car? I like the way it looks. I really like the wheels. I like the black optic thing, and then I like the best part about this whole car is the backup cameras. It has cameras like all around the car. So I bought this car because of the camera system, because of the wheels, and because I really like the paint. Now I was in the car today and I hit a button and something happened in the car, and I don't know what I did, but the whole display changed. I was like, I don't even know what button I hit. Okay, so that's what we're talking about with the labs here. You're starting with this high level, okay? Paint, wheels, backup camera. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. There's all kinds of I'm sure I could spend hours and hours reading through the Audi booklet about the details of how that car works. I'll probably never do that. And you don't need to know the details. You don't need to know the details to drive that car. You don't need to know the details of these labs in order to interpret them and treat patients at a high level. If you wait until you understand every commensal bacteria on one of these tests, you will never get started. I mean, look at this. I'm just going to show you the GI 360. There's so much data here. Even if you decided to get a PhD in microbiology starting tomorrow, good luck getting through understanding each one of these markers at the depth that you really need to. So what we rely on with these labs is for them to summarize this information. And if you look at the summary information, it's all these algorithms and computers cranking out all this information, and you get a really good representation of what's going on. Okay, so you don't need to know the fine details. I don't need to know every little button in that car to drive it around and have fun in it. You just need to know 3 things. You master these 3 things, you'll be in really good shape, because these are the 3 things that you're going to treat directly that are going to move the needle. The microbiome can be disrupted by diet, by bad sleep, problems with stress, all kinds of things. But once that microbiome gets thrown off, now you're starting to have inflammation, the immune system is getting a little wonky, things aren't working well. And if that goes on for long enough, then you enter into what I call stage 2. Now, not only do you have the microbiome and inflammation and all that, but now the organs are reacting, and there's not that many that can react. You can have a stomach problem and not make enough stomach acid. You can have a pancreas problem and not make enough enzymes. You can have a gallbladder problem and not make enough bile. And then you can have inflammation and weakened immunity and all that leaky gut, if you want to call it just a gut problem in the intestines. And so you need to figure out with each patient, am I going to treat the stomach, the pancreas, the gallbladder, or the intestines? Which organ is involved? And the lab will tell you, okay? And just treat that organ. Again, so when you're looking at these markers, you're looking at, is there a microbiome problem? Yes or no? And every lab will have a chart, little graph, they'll tell you that. And then you're looking, okay, which organ do I need to treat, or organs? Okay, stomach and gallbladder. Okay, got that. And then you look to see if there's an infection. It's that simple, okay? So again, the microbiome first, then the organs, three biggies: pancreas, pancreatic enzymes, you'll see markers for that, bile, all these labs have markers for gallbladder function. Is there a problem there? And then the immune and inflammatory responses in the intestinal tract. Is there leaky gut? Those are the three big ones, and then stomach is kind of in the mix there. Now, if you have a microbiome imbalance and a bunch of organs that aren't working really well, it's just a matter of time until the natural defenses in the body diminish, and then you start to get a problem with an infection. Okay, infections start to pop up. And by the way, I have to give credit to Paul Larkin. Paul Larkin is a wonderful scientist and a scientist and a great human being. He and I worked together on this lecture, and Paul is the head of education at Pure Encapsulations. Okay, so I got to give him a shout out because a lot of this is his little diagrams and stuff. It's me saying what I want to have happen, and then Paul making it really look great and getting all the science together for this stuff. Okay, so now let's just look at some labs. Now, when we look at a lab, is there stage 1 present? Is there stage 2? Is there stage 3? And then treat one or all three of these. Now, stage 1, we're going to look for the microbiome itself, and then we're going to look for short chain fatty acid problems, including butyrate, especially butyrate. For the organ issues, we're going to look for pancreatic enzyme problems, stomach problems, inflammation, immune problems, right? And then for pathogens, we're looking for pathogens. So let's look at some labs. And then let's look at labs for a minute. I'm going to design a little program or two here or there, and then we can get into the second part of the second section of the lecture stuff. Okay, so here we are. We've got this GI test back. And by the way, who do you order these tests on? When I was trained, Dr. Timmons ordered, before you could talk to Dr. Timmons and do a consultation with him, you had to have completed an adrenal and a GI test. And I knew him for a long time until he died. I mean, I knew him for probably 10 or 15 years really well. I always thought that was like a little overkill. But now I do it myself. It's funny, isn't it? You get older, you're like, oh, that was a really good idea. So in Dr. Timmons' practice, he was a naturopath, one of the great naturopaths of the 80s and 90s, really. Oh, he's a wonderful man. Anyways, when in his practice, every single patient, it didn't matter if you had cancer or toenail fungus, if you wanted to have a baby, or if you were a baby, it didn't matter. Everybody did a GI test because he believed in functional medicine, and he believed that the microbiome and the gut were the center of all illness, and that we had to check the gut. Okay, so in regards to who you do this with, it's pretty much everybody. So here's a GI map, and we're looking for three things now. And this is, I'm doing this on purpose. This is confusing. I'm showing you the three main tests that are used in our industry, and we have to try to wade through these because this is reality-based education here. So nobody does the markers in the same order. Everyone's got different little things here or there, but that's like the button on my Audi that I hit by mistake. Every car you can just look at the color, the wheels, and the camera system, you know? That's what we're looking at. Bum, bum, bum. 1, 2, 3. You can look at a BMW, you can look at a Mercedes, you can look at Alfa Romeo, you can look at a Ford, and you can just see dun, 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 dun. That's what we're doing. So we're looking at three different companies, three different labs. They're presenting the information completely differently, but we're just looking for three things: pathogens, organ issues, and the microbiome. So let's just do them in order. Stage 1 is microbiome. So in this lab, you have to cut down to the section that says microbiome. Except for they don't call it microbiome, and they call it normal bacteria, but what they mean is microbiome, same thing. So there it is. It's not the beginning of the lab. In fact, it's kind of towards the bottom of what appears to be stage 2, page 2, sorry, page 2. Stage 1 is on page 2. Normal bacterial flora. For this lab, this is the microbiome portion of the test. Does it look good to you? Doesn't look that good to me. Some are low, some are high. Clearly there's a problem. So you get your little checklist, check. There's a problem with the microbiome. What kinds of treatments are you going to do? That's a good question. So let's look at that. This doesn't have to be as complicated as it seems. In fact, the simpler that you make these treatments, the more effective they will be. So we have a stage 1, meaning a microbiome problem. How do we know that? Because we just looked at the normal bacteria and they were all up and down all over the place. So then what are we going to do? The treatments are prebiotics, probiotics, and butyrate. You can't imagine how effective and amazing butyrate is. You should spend, please don't do this right now, but maybe tomorrow, look up butyrate and see the things that butyrate does. And butyrate is now available. Pure Encapsulations carries it, and Designs for Health carries it, okay? And it's a rather incredible product for many different reasons, the least of which we're talking about here. Okay, so stage 1, microbiome, you're gonna do prebiotics, probiotics, or butyrate. You can figure that out. Okay, so then what are we thinking? Oh, stage 2. So organs. So the organ markers on this test are at the end. I've looked at thousands of these, so I just kind of remember that. So there it says intestinal health, digestion. Steatocrit, that's gallbladder. Elastase, that's pancreas. Immune response, secretory IgA, that's going to be inflammation, immune reactions, right? Calprotectin and the immune response. This is basically the intestinal tract. How strong is the intestinal tract immune response? What's happening in terms of intestinal tract inflammation? Okay, so if steatocrit is abnormal, gallbladder problem, treat it. If elastase is abnormal, pancreas problem, treat it with enzymes. If SIG-A or calprotectin are out of balance, you may need to refer out sometimes to a doctor, a gastroenterologist, or in many other cases, you're just going to treat the inflammation and immune response. Okay, so that's stage 2. And stage 2 is organs, GI organs. There's only 4 of them, okay? So there's only really 4 choices here. So, well, let's just say gallbladder support. Every company has one gallbladder product. Usually they only have 1 or 2. You know, it's not a big topic, you know. I don't know why. Gallbladder is probably the most undertreated problem in the GI sphere that I inhabit, at least. When I see patients that have been around and just really should have been fixed a long time ago, it's almost always gallbladder. So if you get a complicated case, just think gallbladder. Let's see. Oh, pancreatic enzymes, right? And then you can do the things for SIG-A or inflammation. So anti-inflammatories, you know, classic ones would be like curcumin. Some people use SPMs, anti-inflammatory. And then a lot of people use immunoglobulin stuff, IgG stuff, or glutamine powders. All those things for leaky gut repair. Okay, that would be a stage 2. And then we're looking for pathogens. So we gotta, and I actually do it this way when I get these tests in my practice, and when I show these tests to patients, I don't go through them in order. I just skip around and find stuff. Oh, this is a really good case. You want to see this case? Check this out. So Megan presented this case this Tuesday. A 5-year-old kid, okay? 5-year-old kid with really bad digestive problems. Check this out. H. pylori, that's a pathogen. Dysbiotic bacteria, that's at stage 3. Those are bad bugs we want to kill. Dientamoeba fragilis and Pentatrichomonas hominis. Ding, ding, ding. That's 3 different markers that qualify this child for stage 3. So stage 3, this kid is for sure going to get better. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so what do we have? Bugs. Let's just call them GI bugs. Pathogens sound so serious. GI bugs. In terms of, I always try to speak in the way I speak to patients. If you say pathogen, pathological, I don't know. People don't. It's just not a friendly term. If you say you have GI bugs or your kid has GI bugs, I just think it's a lot easier. So H. pylori in this case, D. fragilis, and there was some dysbiosis. Oh, and there was Pentatrichomonas hominis. Okay. So now, in this particular case, and this is often the case, you may need to treat more than one stage. So then the question comes up, which one do you want to treat first? Different philosophies here. A lot of people always treat the pathogens first, so they would go for the stage 3 first. When that's better, treat the organs. When that's better, do the microbiome. You know, that's kind of like the remove, repair, replace kind of thing. The really old people that I hang out with, like the doctors that are in their 80s, I've been doing this 30 years. The ones that have been doing this for like 50 years, 60 years, they do the opposite direction. They're old. I don't know if that means that they have this infinite level of wisdom, you know, or I also think a little bit it's that they're not worried about their practice and making people feel better. They want to operate at this really high level. They all start at the microbiome because they're like, well, wait a minute. The microbiome imbalance is what started all this. Let's get to the root cause of the microbiome imbalance and fix this. And if we get this fixed and the diet fixed, everything else will get better. I personally don't do it that way. I'm 57 years old. I haven't reached this level of enlightenment yet, but I'm telling you, all the people that are senior to me start with stage 1. I start with stage 3. You can do it either way, clearly. Pick a lane. Doesn't really matter as long as you cover everything that's on here. Okay. So now we're going to take that same conceptual framework and we're going to look at a different lab company's test. Oh, and in the mentorship, we do organic acids testing like a lot. So these cases have that element too. Let's see. It's not the right one. Hang on. I think I went the wrong direction. Sorry, it's this one here maybe. Here. So I want you to just get a little exposure to other tests so you can see how this would work with different tests. Okay, so here's a Genova GIFX. A lot of you have probably seen these. Great format, great way of presenting all this information, but we're taking it from 5 areas that they've summarized down to 3. So we're just, what are we looking for? Stage 1, microbiome. Stage 2, is there an organ problem? Stage 3, are there any infections? So let's see here. I'm just seeing if there's another one in here. No, that's the only one we have. Okay, we'll have to work with what we have here. Okay, so what you do on this test, first of all, you look at their little charty, graphy, colory thing here, okay? And it'll give you a general sense of what's happening with the, here it is, with the commensal bacteria. Commensal microbiome analysis. This is the microbiome part. This is the stage 1 part, and they've summarized it and put a big circle with a U there. Not like the letter U, but like a YOU. So it's like U. They should have the patient's picture there. That'd be hilarious if they actually put like digitally impose the page. Anyways, I think that'd be funny. But not great, right? Green is great for all of these lab companies. Green is great, red is bad. Everyone agrees on that. It's not like one company does it the other way. So then we go back up here and you can see under microbiome support, the microbiomes, it's a 6. That's so you know there's a microbiome imbalance. And then I can just show you here so you can kind of cheat and not have to look at the lab. Products of protein breakdown, there's a problem there. Right away now you know there's a problem with the stomach. If the pancreatic elastase was all messed up, then you know there's a problem with the pancreas and you need enzymes. And if fecal fats were off, you know they need gallbladder support. So basically for this lab company, this is the stomach marker. The pancreatic elastase is the enzyme marker, and the fecal fats is the gallbladder marker. Okay. And yes, there is an HCl problem there. And there is a microbiome problem. And then are there any pathogens or infections? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so for this particular test, and there's pages and pages of data here, but we're just going for the heart of it, right? We're going 1, 2, 3, punchy, punchy, punchy. So now we have on this particular case, let's just flip down here. We just said that they had a stomach problem, right? So they need betaine HCl. Give them a couple of those with each meal. That's for the stomach. They had no pathogens, so no GI bugs, but there's sort of this dysbiosis, commensal bacteria thing going on. The microbiome was off. So they do need the pre-probiotic approach and maybe even some butyrate if you want to like push them a little harder. That's for the stage 1 part. This is the organ involvement, right? This is stage 2. That's it. They didn't have, maybe they need a little dysbiosis tune-up. And dysbiosis is defined differently by the different labs. For some of the labs, it means that the commensal bacteria are out of balance. For some of the labs, it means that the pathogenic bacteria are out of balance. So dysbiosis as a term is used in a lot of different ways, and it's very confusing because people are confused. It's not inherently confusing. It's just that people are confused and they use the term sometimes to describe commensal bacteria that have gone wild, and sometimes they use it to describe potential pathogens that are out of balance. I don't know if that's ever confused you, but I think it's pretty inherently confusing to me. You're supposed to sort through those two things, okay? And then let's look at one more. So again, just drilling this down, microbiome, organs, and pathogens. Then here's a GI 360. It's just a 9-page lab report. Okay, there's no way you're going to understand this in your lifetime. I can guarantee you there's no way anyone that's listening to this is going to understand all 54 of these commensal bacteria and how they interact with one another. Even if you went today and got a PhD in microbiology and then a PhD in statistics, and then you went to Switzerland or France, wherever they do all this algorithm generation stuff for these markers, you would have to have several advanced scientific degrees and a decade or two of experience with a supercomputer to figure this out. I mean, I can't even pronounce some of these. Look at this, Bacteroides zuguloformans. There's no way you're going to comprehend this marker by marker. It's not possible, nor are you supposed to. Hence the dysbiosis index. So this, and they tell you right here, it's a calculation with scores from 1 to 5. 5 is bad. Green is good. Red is bad. Same as the other labs, okay, lab companies. Values above 2 indicate a microbiome profile that differs from the defined normal biotic reference population, i.e. dysbiosis. So what they're trying to say here is that if this thing goes above a 2, the person has dysbiosis. How do they know that? Because there's this group of people in Europe that have been crunching numbers on these 54 commensal bacteria, and they looked at, I don't know how many gazillions of people who had various GI diseases, and then were able to classify how their microbiomes were working. So anyways, there's computer algorithms and research scientists that are doing this. They're taking 54 markers and crunching numbers for you and telling you, okay, it's a 2. That means that it's in the green zone, right? It's not bad. Okay. Now, but here, that's for dysbiosis. But look, there's a whole bunch of low bacteria. These are good guys. Faecalibacterium prausnitzii is very famous in relation to COVID, by the way. Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, see that one there? That's becoming very famous these days because of its impact on COVID. This guy here. You should read about that. It's pretty interesting. Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. So that's low, not good. This is Clostridia is low. This is not the bad Clostridia. This is the good Clostridia. So there's 5 or 6 of the good bacteria that are low. Okay, but there's not anything to kill because there's no dysbiosis. So this would be a stage 1, right? Low microbiome, but no dysbiosis. And again, dysbiosis is used differently by different labs, that term. It's a little confusing. Here. And then here are all the infections, no infections. Oh, there's a, and then this lab has, where does that go? They have all the GI markers towards the end here. Here you go. Elastase, that would be pancreas. Fat stain, that'd be gallbladder, etc. Inflammation, that would be the intestines inflamed. Leaky gut, you want to treat. Secretory IgA. So you start to see the patterns. Now, each lab has these markers in different arrays, in different sequences. But if you're thinking 1, 2, 3 like this, you can easily look at any of these tests and in 5 or 10 minutes have a general kind of orientation to figure out what the heck is going on. All right, so let me let's see here. Let's design a protocol. Let's just use this one because this is a good one. Okay, so let me pull up a program. Let's just design one full program. So, and I'll just make up the findings here so we can all be on the same page. So let's say this person has a elastase problem out of range. They have H. pylori. And Giardia. I'm making this up now, but it's similar to the one that we just saw. And then they have Oh, low, let's just say, make it easy, low butyrate, make it easy on ourselves. And low commensal bacteria. That's kind of saying the same thing, isn't it? Because it's the commensal bacteria that make the butyrate. Okay, so with it, if you had a case like that, I'll just show you one real protocol. I would give digestive enzymes. Couple with each meal. We'd want to treat the H. pylori, so we do that with mastica, 500 milligrams. This is right out of the Mayo Clinic, by the way. It's exactly what we did with them. Then usually some DGL, or something else like that, right, to calm things down. And maybe some other additional support, stomach support, let's call it, some other anti-inflammatories like slippery elm, stuff like that. So there's our H. pylori program. And then after that is completed, you treat the Giardia. Let's say the patient doesn't want to take antibiotics because they've had too many antibiotics in life or something. Or maybe if they want to take antibiotics, then they could just do Flagyl here. But let's say they don't want to do it. Then you do an herbal parasitic program or antibiotics. A lot of my patients use antibiotics. I'm not against that. It's okay if you want to do that. Sometimes it's faster and better. And then if they have low butyrate, then you would use butyrate. There's two different forms of it. There's sunbutyrate, that's from Pure, and there's tributyrin. One's a pill, one's a liquid. They're basically the same thing from Designs for Health. Let's use that 3 times a day. Okay, and that would be like a basic stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 program. Oh, no. So we're doing the enzymes, that's for the pancreas, the mastica and DGL to get rid of the H. pylori, some extra stomach support because of the H. pylori. These are the antimicrobials. Oh yeah, and this is from a stage 1, is a butyrate. So we've got really combined here. This is a stage 1 supplement. We're kind of mixing and matching here. This would be a stage 2 supplement. So I guess you can mix and match them too. I never thought about it that way. You can treat one stage and then the next. In this case, we're kind of mixing and matching a little bit, kind of letting them overlap. And this is a stage 3. Depends on how many other supplements they have and how much do you think they can deal with. This is like a stage 2 one. Okay, so you can combine them. I guess I just did kind of unintentionally there. Oh, and then the H. pylori treatment is for 2 months, 2 months of the mastica. Then stop, give them a little break for a week or 2, and then you go after the parasites either with medications or with herbs. All right, now I want to pause for a moment. I will answer questions at the end, but for those of you that are, been doing this for a long time, I wanted to show you this other stuff. Okay, we just have to, we're officially wrapping up the talk now, the regular talk. So if you need to run, go ahead and run. If you want to stick around, let's just do a little informal thing about how, I just want to show you some really cool stuff. Because I think there's, the reason why I'm doing this is that, there's the drudgery of being in practice. After 30 years, I mean, I don't enjoy every patient and every, I overall enjoy it a lot. It's like Glenn said, 95% of the time, it's the best job in the world. Glenn Frieder told me that 30 years ago. He's right. But 5% of the time, it kind of sucks. Like the patients, not getting better, or you're having a bad day, or I don't know, something's going on. The universe is just not in alignment. And I think that there's sort of the drudgery of the day-to-day part of the practice. There's the joys of watching an autistic kid speak for the first time. I mean, that's happened to me 2 or 3 times in my career. The kid has never spoken his or her whole life. We put him on a program, kid is talking now. I mean, that just brings tears to your eyes. And it's like the joys of practice are really intense in this business. You see things like that all the time. And it's really kind of mind-numbing how much better a lot of people get. But there's, I think, the need to not only have the practical application skills of like, okay, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, you need this supplement for that. But then there's also the need to really kind of dig in behind the science and understand what we're doing. So what we're talking about now is purely theoretical. You don't need to know any of this other stuff, but it really helps me stay engaged in my practice and in my patients to learn these other ideas, to not just memorize algorithms for treatment, you know, but to also just get a deeper understanding of what's going on behind the scenes with all these things. So I'm going to just spend 5 minutes on that, okay? And in particular, and specifically in relation to the microbiome. So these are just like almost like my personal notes from working with Richard, and I'll show you the bigger picture. So if we're trying to step back and just look from a 30,000 foot view, what the heck is the microbiome? What's going on here? It's complicated, right? So it's a process. It's an interactive process of these trillions of organisms literally feeding off one another. So we eat dietary fiber. This is just one aspect of it. I'm just showing you just one process of many. But we eat fiber. These bacteria, some of them convert that dietary fiber, like you chewed on a piece of broccoli, okay, you ate an apple. They turn that fiber into fat. I mean, that's a little bit of a miracle. We call them short chain fatty acids, but these are fats. They convert the fiber into fat. So what happens is the bacteria, some of these bacteria, right, a group, a subset of them, grab that fiber, they use it as a fuel supply for their own bodies, and what they eliminate, their waste product that they're getting rid of are short chain fatty acids. The main one is butyrate. It just so happens that that butyrate then is 70% of the fuel for your intestinal tract lining. That's incredible. And what's even more amazing is when that butyrate leaves your gut, the butyrate, these bacteria made from fiber, when that butyrate leaves your gut, gets into your bloodstream, goes to your brain, does anybody know what it does? Type it in if you know what it does. See if anyone knows this one. And this is directly related to long haul COVID treatments. When people have neurological symptoms, that's a clue. Okay. When butyrate hits your brain, it stimulates the production of brain derived neurotrophic factor, BNF, right? BDNF. BDNF levels go up in the brain from butyrate in your gut, hitting your brain. That's how crazy this is. So if you eat fiber, your brain starts to heal and repair and grow better. That's how crazy this is, okay? So then those bacteria, there's another group of bacteria that make hydrogen, okay? And then there's another group of bacteria that consume hydrogen. So you can see where this is going, right? If you don't have these guys, then these guys take a hit. If you don't have the hydrogen, then these guys have nothing to consume. So they're all completely dependent on one another, and they're all looking to you for what you're chewing on to see how this is going to go down. And if you're chewing on a Snickers bar, a bunch of nachos, and butter pecan ice cream, I'm naming my 3 favorite things I try to not eat. I don't know if I've ever had all 3 of those at the same time. I probably have, but Snickers bar, butter pecan ice cream, and nachos, not a lot of dietary fiber going down. This whole thing gets completely screwed up. That whole meal, you just might as well, go take a bottle of probiotics or something, or just have a drink of whiskey, go to sleep or something, because you just screwed up your microbiome really bad. Okay, so now there's also bacteria. You can look at these bacteria also just by their abundance, by how much of them there are. Right? And this is a little chart that shows you. And here's our Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. There's a lot of that stuff in your gut. Should be, anyways. And then you can also look at them by their functions. And again, these are like notes of mine. It's not really a lecture per se, but yeah, check this out. We make energy using oxygen. Everybody knows that. You breathe in and out, and then the oxygen enters your mitochondria. But these bacteria that we're talking about, these commensals are in the large intestine. There's no oxygen down there. Okay, and so they take when we're functioning and we have all this hydrogen that's a result of making energy, right? All the little protons are floating around. Then we use oxygen, we bind it together, and it turns into water. But these bacteria have to make energy in an environment that has no oxygen. So they take all their leftover hydrogen. There's no oxygen there to bind it to make water. They bind it to other hydrogens and they make hydrogen gas. These hydrogen come together, right? That's how crazy it is. And so we're making CO2 and water. These guys are making short chain fatty acids and hydrogen gas. That's insane. And then to make it even crazier, there's a whole nother bunch of bacteria in there that can only live on hydrogen gas. So they can't function unless the hydrogen producers are there. This is so insane. This is just so complicated. You can't even believe it. And then there's a whole bunch of them. These are the hydrogen removal ones here. Methanobrevibacter smithii, Deep Hydra, Akkermansia. These are the ones that live on that stuff. Oh no, Akkermansia is even more special and cool. Akkermansia lives on mucin. Okay. Oh, it's just the stories for each one of these are just insane. So the idea being that it's complicated and that there's no way you can say this one bacteria is low and we're going to try to treat it until it gets better, right? There's just too much going on to make that work. You have to think in generalities when you're dealing with the microbiome. So you can use dietary fiber, prebiotics, probiotics, butyrate. You can use diet itself, because if we're eating the right foods, these bacteria naturally start to grow out properly. And what does that mean? So there's two, I don't think I have a slide on this, but there's two major categories of stuff you have to eat to make this microbiome thing happen. One would be, here, I can just write it in here, hang on a second, when you're coaching patients on this. One would be fiber, and we talked a ton about fiber already for obvious reasons. You know, you need the fiber to make the butyrate. You need the short chain fatty acids so they can make the hydrogen. You need the hydrogen producers so the hydrogen consumers can work. So if you don't have fiber, that whole cycle I showed you just doesn't work. And so fiber primarily from beans. Lentils are the best, but I don't really like lentils that much. I don't know if you like lentils, but you can use any kind of bean. Black beans, you know, garbanzo beans, any kind of beans. That has the ultimate type of fiber. Many other foods have fiber, but you should have beans in your diet every day, a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And then you need polyphenols. And for that, I don't know. I like have this thing now about cranberries. I eat blueberries every day. I eat blackberries. If the kids don't eat them, they're kind of expensive. We get them for the kids, but if the kids don't eat them, I'll eat the blackberries. There's a bunch of other things. You can get polyphenols from green tea if you like to do that. Many other sources of polyphenols. But polyphenols feed the good bacteria. Fiber feeds the good bacteria. And that, if you're doing that on a daily basis, oh, you know what we're doing now a lot? I'm putting pomegranate in all my salads. I have this really killer salad now with the pomegranate, a little bit of the cranberries, and then all the greens. And it's like a polyphenol party. So dietary changes, are obviously a huge part of this as well. Okay. So let me just recap and then we can look at some questions. So the key points here are, where's my PowerPoint? Here. This? Yeah, here we go. Key points here are, oh, there's the cranberries. Where'd they go? Oh, yeah, there's the pomegranate. Oh, and I got to talk about this stuff too. Okay, so the key points are that there's 3 different stages. You can look at this really simply: microbiome, organs, and pathogens, and start to treat those and explain this to patients using that language. Business Essentials Bootcamp, for those of you that joined us late, is coming up in February. We do this once or twice a year, one of our more popular classes. You get $100 off if you use that discount code. And this is 2 months of looking at business operations, financial planning, business planning, telehealth, legal aspects, infrastructure, staffing, all the things that go into running a business. And it's very activity oriented. Like you have to write out a business plan. You have to write out a financial plan. And then we get into our group online and we talk about all these things every week. And people find this a really inspirational class. And if you're thinking about starting a practice or you're working on your business now, this can be really transformational. And almost everybody loves it. If you're not comfortable talking about money, then maybe it's a little awkward, but we have to all get over that at some point. We have our mentorship that's coming up at the end of January. This is our flagship 1-year course where you really get to learn how to interpret labs at a deep level. And we get to do what we did for an hour today, but every week, hour after hour after hour. So we have 1 live call for each group in the mentorship, and then I have a pre-recorded curriculum for you guys, and then we have hundreds of hours of special lectures and topics that I've recorded. So it's a pretty wonderful experience. If you really want to become an expert at lab interpretation, that is the way to go. Okay, and you also get a discount, $799 off if you use that code, and that is starting in about a week if you guys are interested in mentorship. Okay. All right, so now let me turn towards questions and see. We won't get through all of them, but let me see how many I can do. Let's see. You can't really go wrong. The first question from Linda is, which of these 3 tests should I order? They each have their own special applications. I use all 3 in my practice on a routine basis. You can't really go wrong. And then what ends up happening after a few years, you'll develop your favorite because of certain markers they have, or maybe just the sales rep that you like more at one place, or you like their turnaround time is faster or something like that. So you can't really go wrong. Any of 3 of those, they're all same kind of scientific quality, same kind of commitment by the lab directors. And I know the lab directors of each one of these companies. I know Tony Hoffman, who does a GI map test, good friend, known him for many years. I just talked to him a few weeks ago. I know the guys at Daryl, who owns Doctors Data and is devoted to our profession like no one else. I mean, he's an amazing person, and he's put everything he can into the GI 360 to make that a flagship test. And then the GI Effects was developed by my teacher, Richard Lord. So I use all 3 though, because they each have special features we won't have time to get into, but you can't go wrong, okay? And you really can't go wrong with any of them. So then Kathleen's asking, do I treat infections after stage 1 and 2? No, I don't. So I do the killing part first. I'm not saying that's better. Remember how I said all my teachers say don't do that? But I like to get results kind of fast, and I really like to kill things. And it's maybe a personality defect on my side, but it's worked for me. But you can absolutely do it the other way, okay? You don't have to do it that way whatsoever. Let's see. What kind of stage 3 treatments? All the basic stuff. So like this morning, we're talking about Flagyl and Alinea. If you want to use medications for parasitic infections, people use various things for, like I mentioned, for H. pylori. If you want to go the herbal route, you can use things like Mastica. For anti-parasitic programs, use a lot of Artemisia, black walnut, berberine, grapefruit seed extract, colloidal silver. It's all the standard things, basically all the companies that we work with carry. Nothing super special. And for each bug, I have my own personal preference. I pretty much 100% still do what Dr. Timmons taught me 30 years ago in terms of the pathogen treatments because they work so well. I haven't changed 1 milligram of anything since of what I was taught. So the stuff I teach in the mentorship program is exactly what Timmons taught me in terms of the herbs. Let's see. If they can't afford the GI test, then you want to start with stage 1 and the diet. Beans, which are cheap. I was at Whole Foods a couple months ago buying beans, and the woman that was checking me out, ringing me up was, I don't know, she was maybe 25 years old. She's kind of young. And she's looking at me like suspiciously. I felt like it was like a drug dealer or something because I had like a bag of black beans and a bag of pinto beans and and she was clearly not comfortable with the fact that I was buying all these beans. Clearly this didn't happen very often. I was like, is anything wrong? And she's like, oh no. It's just like people don't usually buy beans here. And I was like, okay, well, it's not a popular food. I don't know why. Even at a place like Whole Foods, people are not buying beans. So we should all be buying beans. So beans and then the polyphenol containing foods. That'll get your microbiome going faster than anything, H. pylori treatments last for 2 months. You wait for 2 months after the treatment before you retest for any of these bugs. That's standard, okay? I most of the time treat H. pylori unless there's a reason not to. Reasons not to, maybe she's pregnant, maybe it's a young child, there may be some reasons why you wouldn't want to, okay? Never treat the parasites in H. pylori at the same time. Now, I was taught that, and I've tried to do it many times. It really goes bad, so it's just too much for the body. So just do them one at a time. It's not worth doing them both. And Myra got the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor question right, so 10 points for Myra. She's the only one. And then keto diet in relationship to healing the microbiome. That is too complex to get into. That can work depending on the patient's circumstance. What's more commonly effective is a plant-based diet. A lot of patients that have severely damaged gut linings cannot handle a plant-based diet because they can't even eat vegetables or fruit. So you're in a bit of a conundrum there, and you can't use what might be the ideal diet. So you have to work around that and just kind of work with where the patient's at, Bad bacteria feed off all the bad stuff, basically sugars, starches, stress. The mentorship is for all types of practitioners. We have chiropractors, naturopaths, medical doctors, physical therapists, psychologists, a lot of acupuncturists, tons of nurse practitioners, MDs of all stripes, OBGYNs, radiologists, a lot of family practice doctors. We have a couple of ICU doctors right now, oncologists, pediatric specialists. It's kind of the whole gamut, people that end up taking that. Let's see, I'm going to run out of time in one more second here. Just one or two more questions. Oh, the dates, Business Essential Bootcamp, February 16. Mentorship, this is for Dorinda, I think here. Let's see. Business Essentials Bootcamp is the 16th. Oh, and then the mentorship is the 26th. Those are the dates, okay? Let's see. Yeah, it's one infection at a time. This is from Sharni. It's better to do one infection at a time. I mean, this is one of the things that Timmons was really clear about. If you're going to go after H. pylori, don't give them like 500 milligrams of mastica. Give them 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. That is a lot of mastica, okay? That's 3 or 4 times more than most practitioners use. So you're giving that much mastica, you don't have much room for anything else. And so he was a naturopath, and these naturopaths were fearless. The naturopaths from the 60s and 70s and 80s, they didn't care about licenses. None of them were licensed. There wasn't licensed for naturopaths in the United States at that time. They were on the fringe to begin with. And when they did treatments, they were very serious about it, you know. They didn't namby-pamby around. And so I inherited a little bit of that in my protocols. And so yeah, if you're going to do an aggressive treatment program, you can really only do one at a time. Like if I went to a doctor, a regular doctor, and and they said, well, we're going to treat, I don't know, like 2 completely different conditions at the same time with 2 different antibiotics. I mean, you just be like, whoa, let's just slow this train down a little bit. So these treatments are pretty significant in their effect, and you really don't want to overlap them much, okay? The next mentorship starts is for Sarah in about 2 or 3 months. And so if you're wondering about that, you can do a Zoom tour with Jennifer. She can give you all the dates, but we tend to start one every quarter. So there'd be one in January, one 2 or 3 months later, something like that. Okay? And the mentorship only opened up for new applicants once per year. And no, we do the mentorship, yeah, like I said, so I think there's 5 start times. It's going to be January, then add 2 or 3 months to each one of that, you know, and you'll see it. I don't know if we have all the dates published, but you can ask Jennifer if you guys want to do a little chat with her. So we do a new group every 2 or 3 months. And you guys can start think about it and get ready if you're interested. And if you're interested, reach out, because we have a whole staff that is, you know, designed to help answer your questions about the mentorship or the boot camp. A lot of people take both. In fact, probably half the people in the boot camp ended up doing the mentorship because they want to get their business going, and then they realize, oh crap, I better learn how to interpret labs somewhere in the middle of all this. Okay, so we're trying to offer you guys everything you need to get your practices going. All right, I'm way over time here. I'm sorry about that, kind of rambling on, but I wanted to give you that extra little info for the more advanced people. And let me just make sure that I got most of the questions. If you're looking for doctors that do this work, you can go to the IFM website. If you have a Genova test, I do help interpret labs. I still have a practice, so you can go to the Kalish Wellness website if you're a patient and see if you want to work with us through that way, okay? Dietitians, yes, you can do this. But Sarah, if you're a dietitian, you probably schedule a call with me. I can explain to you how you can partner with another practitioner so you can order the labs. That's very doable, okay? I think I got it pretty much covered here. Okay, thank you guys for attending. I appreciate it very much. It's a mini series. Sorry, it's a mentorship mini series, which means this is the first one. We're gonna have a couple more talks coming up, and I hope to connect with you on one of those. Okay, bye for now.